Hello and welcome. It's December 8th, 2022, and I am here with Laura Ashley Coleman, a teacher gone front end developer. So, if you don't mind, go ahead and kick us off with a little bit about you.
Great. Hi, Laura Ashley. So I recently I just got accepted an offer on a job that's for UIUX, mostly HTML and CSS, after finishing a coding boot camp. And I used to be in education after the pandemic, kind of changed everyone a little bit, but teaching became a lot less sustainable of a career for me after 6 years, mental health wise and just interest wise and financially too. So my husband encouraged me to do a coding boot camp because he thought I would be good at it. And it was one of those moments where he like knew me better than I knew myself.
Mm.
So that was really good. And it became um, a really strong interest of mine in that, like UX, UI design. I'm really passionate about all of that. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Awesome. So, w- what were some of was it scary for you? I mean, going from teacher to boot camp, what was that
Yeah.
experience like?
So it was really scary thinking about quitting education. I had put a lot of work into becoming a good educator. I had even gotten a graduate degree in school administration, thinking that's the direction I wanted to go to. I was educated to be a principal if I wanted to, but it just at some point it's hard to realize, that something that you've been involved in for so long is not something you need to continue being involved in. So I think that part was really scary, the quitting. And then I feel like having the boot camp helped me be less scared because I had a structured environment where they were on Central Time. So I wake up at 6 a.m. every day for 10 weeks, take my courses, and get a chance to practice. Also, having a community, the cohort I was working with was really nice. So, yeah, I mean, there were a lot of emotions and excitement mixed together. And I think um, it was a hard decision to make. But once I made it, I was immediately washed with like a sense of relief,
Mm.
especially uh, at the end of the school year after I had told everybody and kind of made it known. It was very relieving to understand that I'd be doing something for myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I imagine a lot of these boot camps, they have a portion that kind of does a little bit of prep for you for job searches and interviews. Was that part of your boot camp experience as well?
Yeah. So I went through Coding Temple. They're based out of Chicago. And part of the reason I went with them is because their price point was pretty good for me and the timing was also good. They had a cohort starting right when the school year ended and would finish in late August. So that worked out really well. And then another thing that really encouraged me is that it was very much focused on after search support. So there's an amazing gal who works with Coding Temple. Her name is Marlene. She is basically our liaison, our support, our coach, and we get her services included with our tuition. And I think that was very much worth it. She taught us how to fix and write up our resumes to not only speak to the skills that we developed in the boot camp, but also to incorporate our previous life skills and actually market those in a way that would help us get a position. She also helped us with getting our LinkedIn pages, navigating job support, job boards, and was just around to help us with every step. Like she helped me with negotiations, and it was a really valuable asset. Her and her colleague Aubrey were really big on helping us with getting that. We had weekly Zoom meetings for job search support. There were other Zoom meetings to practice algorithms and do projects together. So the community was really supportive.
That's awesome. And I think that's I was going to ask about that because I think there's one component that anybody that's looking to do professional development kind of gets concerned about when they start talking about data structures, algorithms, um,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. What was your interview experience like for the job offer that you accepted?
So thankfully, this position was focused primarily on front end. So, and they use the job description said had a ton of stuff on it. And it's really funny how much stuff is listed on the job description and then we don't even talk about it.
Yeah.
So they wanted somebody who was well versed in Angular. I am more familiar with React, and then even and I leveraged that. But even in that conversation, it looked like I wouldn't be interacting with Angular as much as just vanilla HTML and CSS, maybe some JavaScript. So that helped a lot. The interview process for Gateway Ticketing was a little bit crazy. They had me do a pre-screening with the recruiter. I had a biographical interview with the manager who would talk about like, my college experiences and my learning experiences at Coding Temple and time as a teacher. It was very let's get to know you as a person and your background. The third one was the focus interview, and that's where we had more technical questions like, tell me about the CSS box model, or what's the difference between display none and visibility hidden, which I did not get in the interview. I had to Google it, I had to look it up. Now I have it, but there was a lot of that conversation about, do you understand these terms? And when I didn't, it was pretty easy to say, I know how to find those answers. Yeah, I don't know off the top of the dome, but I can figure it out. I'm really good at that. So, so yeah. And then the last interview was the team interview. It was meant to be sort of a technical assessment where I would do a project live in front of them or something. But they didn't have time to prepare it.
Oh,
So,
okay.
I mean, good for them to understand that they need to prepare it in order for it to be a valuable assessment. And basically they said, we don't really have time to prepare it, but I would give you a mock-up and a blank HTML, a blank CSS file, and you would just have to make it. Could you do that? Yes. Yes, I can. I've been practicing mocking up Figma designs for weeks. So
Nice.
yeah.
Okay. Uh, so I mean, so far in your journey, it seems like you do the boot camp, you do
Mhm.
the interview, and it sounds like a lot of interviews. What was that timeline like? Was it kind of nerve-wracking? Was it super spaced out or
Yes. So, I mean, that process with Gateway was probably about 5 weeks total. Because or 6 weeks, the one of the gals who I needed to interview with had a vacation in the middle of that. So there was some waiting involved. And there was a little bit of waiting involved with on their end because they weren't fully equipped to employ in Alaska. I imagine they took a while to make a decision because they were trying to figure out how to get an employee hired legitimately in Alaska. So, I mean, that feels good. But overall, from graduation date to signing the offer, it was about 4 months. So when I say it like that, 4 months does not seem like a very long time. 4 months, like no big deal.
yeah,
4 months to, look for jobs and hunt and practice and be unemployed. It sucked and I hated it. And in the moment, it felt like forever. And I had to just be bitter and be upset and be annoyed, but do it anyway.
yeah,
So, so yeah, because the alternative was not apply and definitely not get a job. So,
yeah. That's it's a good perspective to have. Um,
well, the coding bootcamp also part of their guarantee. They have like a money back guarantee, I guess, if you don't get hired within a certain amount of time. Not, I guess, within the contract. If you don't get hired within a certain amount of time, you have a money back opportunity. Part of that contract is 10 jobs a day.
okay, I was gonna say they have to have something to account for that. Otherwise, if you get a free boot camp, just kind of hang out for
10 jobs a day. I think after a certain level or Caillou and Code Wars, you could get like 15 a week. and then 2 GitHub commits a week. So around the end, it was really hard to keep up with that pace.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I
So
don't have to worry about money back. I'd rather have a job.
yeah, how many GitHubs? It was 2 per week?
Yeah,
Was it on like a personal project or you had to contribute to another
personal
one?
projects. Yeah, it could be whatever you want. It just had to be some sort of commit per week, which wasn't hard to do, but it's an interesting thing to balance when you're unemployed. You have this like big stack of time,
Mhm.
right? It's like I can work on projects, and I can work on data structures and algorithms, and it's just trying to make sure you stick to the schedule is really something that I thankfully am good at because I've read too many productivity books. But I know a lot of my cohort members were struggling with it, so because it's hard, it just is.
Yeah, I imagine as an educator, that was part of the daily rhythm is being able to maximize your time for
Uh,
productivity.
yeah, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, education probably did help me with that. Not only do I have to manage my time, but also help 12-year-olds manage their time.
Yeah. So, a lot of times people are concerned or run into an issue where the job requires experience
Mhm.
and trying to fight that battle between getting experience and getting a job. Seems like over the course of 4 months, with the help of the boot camp, you didn't really run into much of that. Was there an experience requirement for this particular job?
Yeah, so there's a lot. I mean, I definitely ran into a lot of applications where I would apply and they'd be like, we're looking for this many years. You have 8 months.
Yeah.
If you count like the boot camp and post boot camp, right? So you have less than 2 years or whatever. And there was I feel like a lot of my applications did get rejected by, the robots that be in order to, narrow down their applications. So I think that there was some rejection there based on my lack of experience, but so long as I had a conversation with a human, I was able to articulate that the boot camp was condensed. I believe it counts for 2 years equivalent experience. And here's why my direct experience with whatever platform or language you're looking for is less relevant than my ability to find the answers. And and to figure things out. That's what the boot camp taught me. So to figure things out rapidly too. I mean, we learned full stack applications in JavaScript, Python, SQL, as well as like document databases uh, in the course of 10 weeks. Like we learned a lot. So yeah, it was all I joked around with Marlene, the career coach, that it was all about spin team. It was all about spinning it in
Hmm.
a way. But it was definitely frustrating because if I didn't get to connect with an actual human, there was a lot of rejection. I mean, we had to keep track of all of our things. I applied for 300 jobs,
Wow.
and there were several, I think like at least 100 that were just automatic email rejections. So
Wow, yeah, definitely a numbers game there.
yeah,
So did you run into the effect where some of the uh, companies got your application and had a delayed response? So you end up with, more than one offer kind of staggered.
no, that doesn't happen. I mean,
Okay.
I didn't. So that's the thing is that you said it's a numbers game. It's also like a shotgun approach. When you look at the data, I had 300 applications that I submitted. Several were automatically rejected. I had maybe about 9 pre-screenings or phone conversations with people. 3 of those didn't move on to the next round because I live in Alaska,
Hmm.
and some of those uh, were just not the right fit. And then only one I made it to the end. I mean, that's all it takes. I just needed one.
Yeah.
So here's hoping that it's not as grueling the next time I'm looking for a job.
So You mentioned having a new setup,
Hmm.
so I imagine a lot of that I mean, you're working remote, right? Working from home?
Yeah, they're
Uh,
based in Pennsylvania, so.
so what's that dynamic change for you so far? I mean, how long have you been in the role?
Oh, I started in January.
Okay,
So yeah, I'll start in January. But I have been working part-time-ish with my husband's consulting LLC, with a freelance sort of position, doing Figma mockups and some HTML, CSS, front-end design, building new pages in a static site with Hugo. So that's pretty cool. But it's been pretty good. It feels like a continuation of sort of the the work schedule that I had with the boot camp. So thankfully I am familiar a bit with working from home because I did Zoom school for
that's
two
right, yeah, for the
almost 2 years.
pandemic.
So I that showed me I actually really liked it. I liked it a lot. I think the only thing I didn't like is that it's really hard to make 12-year-olds do it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I get it. Like I get it. Could you imagine these poor kids, right? So so yeah, I mean it's not too crazy or out of my wheelhouse. Yeah. Oh, does that answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah, so I imagine you run into, in effect, a lot of the people in the military look at movies and they catch all these different things. When you're looking at you're looking at websites, uh, are you looking at them differently now and picking up the things that you learned and saying, "Hey, that's an odd
Oh,
choice, artistic choice for," you know?
especially when it comes to UI and UX design. I took in my interim unemployment, self-fulfillment, learning how to be and practice. I took Gary Simon's design course. He is a prolific UI/UX YouTuber and Twitter personality. He put out this really nice interactive UI/UX course that teaches you how to understand all of those elements of UI/UX and create well-balanced designs that are easy to follow and visually appealing. And going over all of like the fundamentals, like how to have good balance with white space and typography and alignment and all of these things. And now I can't look at a website without like low-key roasting it. I have no, because now because I had a pretty decent design sense before. I mean, that's what kind of got me into this is, I would spend a long time making all of my lesson materials really nice to look at, easy to follow. Because again, I'm working with children, so it has to be visually interesting and easy to follow, or they're not going to do it. And even when it is, it's hard to make them do it. Um, so anyway, now after taking the course, I now have the vocabulary to articulate why this site is really not the best design. You're using too many colors here, or this contrast ratio does not pass the guidelines for accessibility standards at all.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Wow,
so
yeah. It makes you think back to some of the sites that I made. I was like, "Yeah," having actually a UI developer look at them now, turn them
well,
off
that's
on my details.
the good thing is if you're cringing at the things you made in the past, that means you're growing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Very true, very true. So, what would you say to someone that is looking to make this transition, from all of your experience and lessons that you learned, in your journey? Do you have any advice for someone that's looking to make this transition
Hmm.
into programming or
Yeah, so the
design?
biggest advice I have is the difference between, and this is something I learned from another support resource. His name is Don the Developer. He has a podcast for junior developers or new people looking to get into junior roles. He said the only difference between a new self-taught boot camp, otherwise developer who wants to break into the industry, the only difference between the ones who get a job and the ones who don't are the ones who don't quit along the way.
Mm,
Like it's like you said, it's a numbers game, it's a shotgun approach. After you have developed enough skills in order to build something and to create things and to actually find answers, if you can do those things, keep applying, and eventually it'll happen. And you just got to get someone to take a chance on you. And it's really hard. It's really crappy, but I mean, that's the game. Um, boot camp or no boot camp, I can't say. I did boot camp because I like structure. If you're not the kind of person who can structure your own time and have your own sort of workflow and all that stuff, then the boot camp is the way to go. If you can't afford it and you're perfectly capable of structuring your own learning, by all means, use free stuff, use cheaper Udemy courses. It can be done. So yeah, that's my biggest thing is like, you don't need to go to a boot camp and just keep trying.
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke with another colleague of mine about imposter syndrome, the kind of idea where maybe somebody might be feeling, I'm not good enough to go in professionally or not. I'm not sure if you experienced any of that during that gap in transition, because it seems like your boot camp pushed you pretty hard to say, have that structure for you outset that said, hey, this is what you're going to do, and, grind through it. Uh, did you experience any of that?
Yeah, and I still am. I think that so there's another wonderful resource that Coding Temple provides. There's a weekly imposter syndrome support meeting that I go to, and
Uh-huh.
we get to talk about the things that we're dealing with. And I think that the the conversation in my head is frequently, I am not good enough at this. Why would anyone hire me? I am too new and all that stuff. But there are so many people around me who I feel like are more reliable narrators in the sense that I can trust. So, for instance, Marlene, who has been career coaching and has helped people get, like, thousands of people get positions as junior developers from various careers in life. She says that it's happened and says that my skills as an educator and a communicator are just as valuable as technical skills. Like, technical skills can be taught and learned on the go. The ability to communicate and solve problems is what people are looking for. And so, like, that reassurance is helpful. My husband is constantly telling me about, you know, the fact that you can communicate and explain your code and all this stuff, and you have these skills, makes you hireable, makes you capable. Just because you don't understand it right away doesn't mean like you're an imposter and that you don't belong here. So, like, again, I have to listen to the more reliable narrators in my life, and sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes I am faking it till I make it, and then eventually I will be okay. I have a feeling that my first day on January, my imposter syndrome will get worse. I am fully prepared for that because I'll be responsible for things. And um, but on the other side, I end up having this like dialectal with myself in my brain. On the other side, the good thing is that I don't have to, it's never going to be the same as my first day of teaching, you know, because my
Yeah.
first day of teaching, I had to be ready to present and manage and, for better or worse, entertain, 7 classrooms of 11 to 13-year-olds, of 30 of them. And so
Jeez.
on my first day in this job, sure, it's going to be scary that people are going to realize, oh, we hired somebody who's never had a position. Did we mess up? Is she worth the salary that we offered? Is all of this stuff? No matter what, I just have to show up and be ready to learn and listen. And that is nowhere near as crazy as what I've done before.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I think that the way I deal with imposter syndrome is just to kind of put my own thoughts on trial, right? Does it matter? Is it is it true that people who graduate from boot camps, or people who transition careers, or people who are self-taught don't get jobs? That people with computer science who don't have computer science degrees don't get jobs? No, that's actually not true at all. So yeah, I just have to interrogate myself, I guess.
Well, that's always good uh, to challenge your own perception a little bit out there and say, Yeah,
With
and having
imposter
yourself live
syndrome?
that truth.
Yeah, you gotta.
Absolutely. That was Laura Ashley Coleman. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us. This is Alaska's newly minted front-end developer from teacher to dev.
Right?
Is there
Only
any last thoughts, parting thoughts you want to leave with us?
no, it's just it's really nice that we have this group, and I've learned a lot from people in the group already, helping me talk about CSS, and just it's nice to have a community. So thank you so much for inviting me and talking with me. I feel like I'm a
Absolutely.
part of it now. Great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah.